Cornel West appeared on Brianna Joy Gray's Bad Faith podcast to discuss the backlash that he received to his Alexei Navalny tweet, amongst a couple other things. And he is talking, of course, about our friends over at RBN when he makes a lot of these comments. So we picked about 4 minutes that we're going to focus in on, where he touches on a few things. So let's get started with some of this video.
I read this piece, or I was told about it. I don't read when I was told about it. Well, I'm praying for the family, and then here's people saying, well, he's giving a eulogy, as if he's giving a eulogy for a Nazi, because people are saying sometimes he's a Nazi supervisor. I'm walking.
Okay, all right. We're not going to pause it every 15 seconds, but now that you have the context of that, I want to play this first part again.
When I read this piece, or I was told about it. I don't read when I was told about it. Well, I'm praying for the family. And then here's
when I read this piece or when I was told about it. Now, I don't know if he's talking about whether he read Nick's tweet or whether we read that Navalny had passed away, because it sounds to me like you said when I read the news of Navalny having passing, or rather when I was told about it. And then after that, I had people come up to me and say I had just eulogized a Nazi. Right there, that says to me what I always suspected, which is that he just didn't know who Navalny was before he tweeted that out. Now, if you don't know who Navalny is before you tweet that out, if you're running for president as a left-wing rebel candidate,
and even you're a major public figure
running for office as a left alternative, you might want to not tweet anything out until you do a little research, right? But if your impulses get the best of you and you tweet that out, and you're called out for it, why not either take the tweet down or post a reply saying, hey, I didn't realize at the time I wrote this that I didn't know everything I would have needed to know before writing this. At that point, you'd really have not much of an issue. Of course, Ivy League professor doesn't like being called out by working class black men like Nick and CJ. I think that's it. It's a class thing, right? He's a credentialed professor. Who are these guys? Nick talks about how he's a college dropout. I don't know about CJ, but Nick mentions that a lot about himself because he's self-taught and he's a brilliant guy. But he doesn't have the credentials to be challenging him on this point. That's the way a lot of his response played, including this.
Well. Not only that, I mean, and this plays out over the course of all of this. The shit that he's saying doesn't really make any sense. It's a lot of double talk. It's a lot of high dudgeon, as you point out. You're conceding that you didn't know who he was. Well, our friend Nick has coined a phrase, or he's fond of a phrase that would apply here. You're deeply unserious if you did not know who that was and you're tweeting out something like that. And then his excuse, which we'll get to, is absurd. His excuse for placing him in the company that he did.
People saying, well, he's giving a eulogy, as if he's giving a eulogy for a Nazi, because people are saying sometimes he's a Nazi supervisor. I'm walking down the street, the brother walks up to me and said, Brother West, I didn't know you were a Nazi sympathizer. I said, what you mean, Nazi sympathizer? I'm going down to Charlottesville, put life on the line against these gangsters. What are you talking about? Well, people are writing on the internet, and particular individuals talking about you eulogize a Nazi and you praise another Nazi. But see, this kind of pettiness for me simply is it just shows a deep problem. It's a spiritual problem. It's a moral problem, and it has to be addressed explicitly. And of course, it's a whole little slice of the left. It's not the broad left, but it's part of a left that has been so neglected and so disrespected that they primarily look for put down in order to get various kinds of clicks and various kinds of markets. And so the independent media, Paul Street, who I think is...
Okay, we got to pause it right there. They look for put downs. You're talking about the RBN guys who had you on as a recurring guest they were very excited, as was I, when you decided to run as a Green Party candidate. They were all about it. They had you on at regular intervals. We had nothing but good things to say early on. I liked that you announced on MPP's line. I didn't love that you chose an organization with no real infrastructure, no real ballot access. But I said, fuck it, I'd rather have him in than out. But then when you switched to the Greens, we thought, okay, here's an opportunity. We felt that way. RBN felt that way. Jimmy Dore, I know for a fact, felt that way. He said so on his show. He's told me in conversations offline he was reaching out to your team to try and advise the campaign. You guys didn't want anything to do with him, right? So people didn't come at you for clicks. For clicks, they had you on regularly. What are you talking about?
People were prepared to support him.
Right.
I mean, it was an interesting thing because we amongst ourselves were trying to figure out what that meant, right? Like we were at that stage. Like what are the journalistic ethics involved here? But yeah, no, I mean, we were pretty much all ready to support Cornel West. And the more we saw of him, the worse it got. This overall critique, all right, we always want to be fair on this show, so I'm gonna be nuanced about it. All right. So first of all, my overall thing about whenever people in this space get accused of that, I always say the same thing. If you think that even Jimmy, who's much bigger and more successful than us or RBN, even what he's doing. That is not the way to take advantage of the algorithms. If you want to do well in this space and never worry that YouTube is going to turn around one day and just shut you down, you do a Pod Save America kind of show. That's the grift. That's the way to grift. You never hear motherfuckers like Cornel West talking about shows like that. Like you want to attack somebody, talk about these libs. Who,
Right.
In the end are going to talk about you as a spoiler. They're going to talk about Jill Stein as a spoiler. But that's the way to make money because, first of all, you got a lot of those libs on YouTube. And YouTube's algorithm is not going to work against you if those are your politics. And here's where the real sweet money comes in. If you're doing that, you can get in on that super PAC money. You can get in on that donor money. You can get those people to start supporting you. That's the grift. That's the place to go. So anybody who chooses to do this, I mean, they're either a really stupid motherfucker if they're on the grift, or they actually believe in what they're doing because there's very little upside to choosing to go this way rather than that way if you're just in it to try to make money and get a lot of subscribers. So that's just a stupid thing altogether. Now, does the algorithm encourage conflict? It absolutely does. Absolutely. And, we all know that. And it's not just the algorithm. I mean, it's human nature. How do our union videos do? Keaton, how do our union videos?
Well, of course. Well, it's not only that. I mean, that's why movies and plays and literature, that's why they are built around conflict. What's the first thing you learn in any kind of dramatic writing course or any kind of study of film or theater? Essential to any entertainment media is conflict. If there's no conflict, there's no play, there's no story, right? So obviously conflict gets eyeballs. But before we go elaborate on that, I want to play a little more because this is where he gets into that even more in detail.
One of the most insightful writers around, alongside Brother Chris Hedges and others, that it's clear that the independent media is not that independent. Put it that way. It's dependent on market. And by being dependent on market, you're looking for various clicks, you're looking for eyeballs, you're looking for views.
Yeah. See, this is where he says, okay, asshole, everything is dependent on markets. Everything is dependent on markets. This is a capitalist society. It's a market-based society. What, Princeton University isn't dependent on markets? Here's a guy who makes very good money lecturing at Ivy League universities, which cost a lot of money. Tuition and room and board at Princeton's like $57,000 a year. There's no market incentive for the students to go there. It's all market incentive. So what? You're not on that grift. You're not on a market-based grift, but what? A YouTube channel which takes in a couple $100 in super chats per show. They're the grifters. Like it's ludicrous. It's such a ridiculous charge. Yes, people in media need audiences to sustain their media projects. Is that news? Is that a scandal? I mean, like, that's just such a ridiculous thing to say.
Well, and also, as you could see just from what we were recently able to do, if your objectives are really you want to draw attention to injustice and causes, the more people watch you, the more you can do that. We just covered the Assange hearings.
Right.
That could not have been done if the channel were not successful. We were able to do that because people donated so that we could do that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a question of how you use it and what you do with it. Now, his real exception is that they took exception to him.
Exactly.
And he's not man enough to address it on that level, so he's got to address it on this very slimy level, where he's attacking, as you say, lower class. I mean, everybody in this space, we're all making nickels and dimes compared to what you're making.
Right. You're lecturing at Princeton.
But you're not a grifter, right?
You're lecturing at Princeton where the kids are paying $50,000 a year to go, so that they can get a good job in a capitalist society when they leave. So you're less on the take than we are? It's absurd.
This is
that's not an indictment of you. Look, teach, go say your shit, for 45 minutes a day for however much money they pay you to do it. That's fine. Everybody's got to eat. I'm not giving you grief for that. But as Russell just said, you're not big enough to actually address their points on the merits. And so you basically say that they are just generating fake outrage for clicks and for money, and because they have to stay in good standing with Jimmy Dore, who gave you a tough interview.
Well, and on that level, look, and Nick and CJ, when they came on when I was hosting, made this point. Hey, they don't agree with Jimmy on everything, and they've had open disagreements. But
sure,
then,
of course,
you have certain not very bright Beavis and Butthead people who shall remain nameless took that to mean, oh, there's a big falling out. Meanwhile, I'm like, yo, Jimmy, can I have Nick and CJ on? Oh yeah, sure. So that, and they pointed out when they were on the show, who else is helping small independent creators? Crystal and Kyle aren't doing
and highlighting the mutual aid work.
Highlighting the mutual aid work. Who else is doing that? Who's helping Jose with his campaign? Who?
Right.
Kyle
did a smear piece on Jose. Well, he's a LaRouche. He's not. He mentioned Tulsi Gabbard, so he can't possibly be anti-war. That was his take, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So then you're going to criticize Jimmy Dore, who's the only person who's actually not acting like a grifter. Because all these people, hey man, you're in this independent media, you talk about independent media, then you're going to go on, as Crystal did, and talk about Marianne's campaign as a serious bid for power, and obliquely slam RBN as not being serious because they're not getting behind fucking Marianne.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's the serious move, to get on board with fucking Marianne. Those are the grifters. Look, having dealt with Jimmy personally, I can tell you, you could agree with him, not agree with him, love him, hate him. Every word you hear him say on that show, that's who he is. That's the real guy. You hang out at dinner with Jimmy, It's pretty
Oh,
much
it's
how he
very
talks.
obvious. Yeah, when I had a meal with him in New York, very obvious within 5 minutes sitting down. Because,
That,
not
that's
everybody is
yes,
like they are on camera. Like,
right.
I had lunch with Andrew Yang once a while back because my friend used to work for him. And not a knock. I mean, he was a perfectly nice guy, but he's very different off camera than he is on. On camera, he's very bright and bubbly and smiley. And off camera, he's kind of quiet and reserved. And I mean, he's fine. He's not an asshole or anything, but he's different. Jimmy's the exact same. It's like being on his show when you're sitting across the table. I mean, the
Exactly.
exact same. And so there's no question in my mind that he means everything he says. And there's no question in my mind, I happen to know this for a fact, I'm not just taking his word for it. He reached out to your campaign to give you offline private advice. And the Greens didn't want anything to do with it, which is part of why that was as tense an interview as it was. All right, let's go back to the video.
Realities of the suffering that Brother Aaron's sacrifice highlights is subordinate to the put downs and the trashings and the takedowns that give you attention. And this goes all the way back to Brother Jimmy Dore. I've talked about that in terms of the Jimmy Dore plantation and the folk on his plantation.
Amazing
And
that you would go back there. See, when he mentioned that line on the Tim Black thing, I thought maybe it was in the heat of the moment. Maybe he just said that and then, didn't really think through what he was saying. To actually consciously repeat that again.
No, and you know what, man? This is something we're not really qualified to interrogate, but I will just point out that kind of shit. That's about the deepest insult that one black person can give another. He's basically calling them Uncle Toms.
Well, I said this I got into this on Nick's show with him, and I told Nick at the time, because I was on Nick at Night last week. I said, yeah, I don't know how much it's my place to chime in on this. And he said, go ahead. But I said, that's an ugly thing to say about Jimmy, but it's an even uglier thing to say about you and CJ. It's a really ugly thing to say, especially coming from a Princeton University lecturer, right? Because you're directing that at other black men who Nick, like I said, I don't know CJ's background as well, but Nick talks very openly about the fact that he is a college dropout, right, and a working guy. Like, to say that, yeah, that is a very classist and elitist thing to say. And it's a really ugly thing to say. It's an ugly thing to say once. It's an ugly thing to repeat. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing to let that slip. It's another thing to be like, no, actually, that line, Jimmy Dore Plantation, yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to use that over and over again when talking about the people who gave me a regular platform on their show to promote my campaign. So what, you didn't think any of this about them then when they were on your side, but when they critiqued you substantively, rather than just address that, or God forbid, take the L. Hey, my bad. I shouldn't have tweeted that. I'll either take it down or I'll apologize. Rather than do that, you do this over and over again now? Make repeated horrible insults at the people who reached out to you to help your campaign in the early days?
Yeah, and even if you disagree with them or you're having a disagreement, to go there, he's really revealing over the course of this campaign, as often happens when people run for president, it's the worst thing for their image, because anybody who's done it will tell you it's like being under an X-ray. It exposes you, right? And he has not benefited from being exposed in that way. He has demonstrated he's a real fucking piece of shit. Because, hey, man, not to, I'm not saying we're low, but, we're not where he is. I mean, that is really punching down to take a couple guys with a small YouTube channel and start piling on them by name like that because you didn't like what they said. He's revealing his basic lack of character. Like that's not a man.
Yeah, no, they didn't call him a name. They didn't call him a name. Their original response to his tweet was all substantive.
Well, their critiques are always substantive. And I would point out, just to put a button on the, for click stuff, we were talking about it earlier offline, how, like we don't do a lot of the online gossip shit. And our rule has long been, if we cover that, it only in a case where it illuminates something worth talking about. That's why that's why we never did the fucking Vosh porn horse, whatever the fuck it was. I didn't even pay. Honestly, I don't even really know. I know what happened, but I don't even know what was in it. Like
Right.
because I don't care. Like it doesn't shed light on anything bigger than that. Than
Right.
this person's moral failing. So who cares? We never did any of the Oliemi shit or the Illuminati or whatever the fuck happened there. Who cares, right? But sure, we'll cover it if there's a point, and that's true of RBN too. Like, go find me an RBN video about some stupid shit that has no point
Right.
in that
Of course.
arena, right? I mean, you're going to cover these kinds of controversies. Anybody in journalism does. It's fine as long as there's a point to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Can't really put white supremacy at the center. That's been part of my critique of the Green Party, right? Green Party got some of the best people in the world in terms of people who have a longevity of struggle for justice, but there'll never be a left that doesn't put white supremacy and empire at the center. And the Green Party never ever done that. And so therefore, that was one of the reasons why I couldn't stay. There was also personal reasons why, in terms of my own relations, Jill Stein, and I saw her up close, and what I saw I didn't like, and therefore there was no way I could be able to follow through in that regard. And that's tip of the iceberg. I'm not going to get into all the details and what have you. But of course, same was true with Brother Peter too. Sister Jill and Brother Peter saw him up close, didn't like what.
And I just want to point out, nothing says man of the people like the Klimt and the Rembrandt in the background. I believe that's definitely a Klimt.
Yeah, it's a Klimt.
I think the other one's a Rembrandt.
I saw kept on moving. How come? Because I got one life to live. No, Sister Brianna, I got to focus on the people. I got to focus on how do you deal with the suffering. I had to focus on how we proceed. And the founding of the party was a matter, as you know, we already got Alaska. We got Oregon. We just got United Citizens, the all-black party, South Carolina with the Nullums, magnificent folk, on the way to Utah and Nebraska, and the other states have yet to fully open. Meaning what? On the move. Some states, you have to have a party in order to keep the signatures down to 5,000. If you're independent, it could be 25,000. So we're moving again, jazz-like, improvisational, from state to state. In one state, I can be independent with 5, don't need the party. Another state, if I have a party, I can take it down to 5. Alaska, it was a Aurora party. Oregon, it was a progressive party. Each one of them putting me on. Peace and Freedom Party in California now. I'm part of their nomination process. I'm trying to get on the ballot the best way I can.
I don't think you're going to get on the ballot in California because Claudia de la Cruz is highly favored to win that. That's a primary for their ballot line there. And even if you do win that nomination, you'd be kicking her off the ballot there, which is not a great thing to do, especially when you were on the Green Party ballot line. You had it. You had everything you needed. So all of that is just work that you're forced to do now. The calendar's about to turn to March. Again, this is not early anymore. Right? A lot has to come together in a very short period of time. The other point about how the Greens won't let me center white supremacy, I've heard Ajamu Baraka talk about white supremacy plenty. The idea that like that was somehow off limits seems like an excuse. And most importantly there, the personal drama with Jill Stein and Peter Dow, that stuff is stuff that he doesn't really get into. Now, we have a source here at the DueDissidence podcast who hooked us up with the paywalled version of this, so we watched the whole thing. And towards the end of it, again, he doesn't really say exactly what happened, which Bree rightfully points out is a little disingenuous. Like, if you're going to say, I no longer have faith in them as people, Peter and I didn't get along, Jill Stein, I don't respect her anymore, you should probably say what happened. It sounds to me like what he thinks happened is that Jill Stein wanted to run this year, and that when Chris Hedges sort of got him in with the Green Party, that fucked up Jill Stein's plan. And his theory is that Jill Stein introduced him to Peter Dow so that things would go sideways, he would leave, and Jill Stein could be the nominee. And then he points out that Peter Dow ended up working for Jill Stein for a period of time. Now, that all might be true. Even if it is, it's none of our fucking business. It's not our problem. You were in a unique position to bring name identity, respect, and star power to a third party where you started off polling at 6%. That was the first poll that had you registered at 6 points. There was potential there when you were on that ballot line. If you're running for president, it's not about you having one life to live. It's a public service job. You have a responsibility to the movement to work it the fuck out, whatever it is, and stay in a position to get you as much ballot access as possible with as big a chance to, if not win the presidency, make as big an impact on election day as possible. That is your responsibility to do that. And it's a responsibility that you apparently never took all that seriously, as evidenced by every decision you made since you launched the campaign, and especially evident after you left the Greens. That's when people started losing faith in your campaign, because you sacrificed ballot access in 17 states from jump and almost certainly over 40 states in November. Once you do that, you signal this is not a serious campaign. Once you do that, it's pretty much exposed that this is over. This is over as a project worth backing. Nick Cruz said to Marianne Williamson, why should working people invest millions of dollars in your campaign when we invested $100 million in the Sanders campaign and have fuck all to show for it? And so those are just excuses. I'm not interested in what happened between you and the Green Party. I'm sure the Green Party are fucking difficult as hell to deal with. I have no doubt that you're right about that. But it's your job to make it happen. Make it the fuck happen. You know, this, you know, what is it? Money talks, bullshit walks. Coffee is for closers only. Come on. If you're going to do this, do it.
You know, it's funny. I just watched Repo Man because probably one of the most famous speeches in that movie is about the matrix of coincidence. Right. That is the second time that's come up for me today. The Glenn Ross "Coffee is for closers" line.
Yeah.
It's somebody says shrimp, and then someone says plate of shrimp. No one can explain it. Cornel just likes the idea of running for president, and he doesn't want to take any responsibility for the choices that he's made. Okay, kindest possible interpretation. You're dumb about running for president. You're completely incompetent, and you're a poor vessel for this project. That's the kindest interpretation you can put on it. Your ego is too big to take very valid criticism, and you didn't include this, and I wish you had. There's the whole thing about where he's trying to explain why he lumped Navalny with all of these black radical leaders, and his explanation is fucking moronic. First, he's saying that it's about the mourning family. He's saying, well, of course, I feel bad I was saying something about the family, mourning for the family. Didn't even make any sense. And then he made that crazy lib argument that I actually went back and forth with somebody, but I thought this person was uniquely moronic. But apparently this is a very common lib take because Cornel had it too. The idea that he died for his principle. How do you respond to the idea that the person was a fucking white nationalist Nazi? He died for what he believed in, though. Like that was what he argued. He said, it's you don't have to agree with the person, but they died for what they believed in. You could say that about the people at Jonestown. Do you admire the people at Jonestown? Yes.
Right.
Like you could say that about some of the most horrific people in history, that they died for what they believed in. That is not a standard. That's meaningless. If you're divorcing he's saying, well, you have to say that they have courage. Bill Maher got taken off the air for saying that about the 9/11 hijackers.
Right. Exactly.
He said, well, you can't say that they don't have courage.
Right.
You can't say that they're cowards. Okay, I'll even grant you that. But are you saying that what they were brave on behalf of is completely irrelevant to the conversation? Really? And you're supposed to be regarded as some kind of a moral um, uh, person whose rhetoric and oratory is to be respected and followed and admired and listened to, and you're making that kind of a formulation that it's admirable to die for what you believe in, no matter what it is. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, that part of it, I just
The
took
the
as just
Nazis
more
in the bunker
excuses.
died for what they believed in.
Yeah, I mean, look, those are just excuses for the fact that he didn't look into it before he posted it, because he just took CNN's word for it. He took liberal media's word for it, because those are the sources that he ultimately looks to, in examples like this, right?
Well, and that's
And
where I say he showed in this whole thing.
exactly.
He's not a man. He was not able to man up and take valid criticism. He
Right.
tap
Just
dances
take the
through with a lot of
criticism. Just take the
bullshit
loss.
excuses and then punches down on working class men with a small YouTube channel. Ultimately a small channel. We all have small channels. I mean, these are nothing. These are
Right.
nothing. You want to see a big channel? Go watch the live counts on Critical Drinker. The fucking guy
Right. The
has
movie
like
channels. Yeah.
the movie channel. The guy has like 15,000 fucking people to start.
Right.
It just builds from there. So these are all tiny little channels compared to a lot of the other channels, even in our own space. Like
Right.
Jimmy. He's got fucking what, 1.3 million. So you're gonna fucking punch down like that at fucking small YouTube channels and start talking about grifting with fucking nickels and dimes, amounts of money in a month that you make in a fucking speech. If
Right.
if that
If that.
if that
If that.
you're
If
gonna
that.
you're gonna start just gonna start bitching about like oh yeah, no, there's fucking rivers of money here.
Right.
He's just, the more you see of him, the less there is to like. That's why I say running for president, everybody liked him. He ran for president, and he's showing this whole thing. He just showed what a fucking, fundamentally petty fucking asshole he actually is to even frame it this way.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, it's a nasty business. I mean, running for office, it's a nasty business. It'll bring those things out of you if there's stuff there to be brought out of you, for
Just,
sure.
just fucking apologize, man. Just be like, hey, yeah, I didn't really know everything about him, which he
Yeah, I should have looked
obviously
into
did
it
not.
more. Sorry. I took it down.
That's
That's all.
all.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's all. Even fucking RFK did that for the wrong reasons, obviously. But when he defended Roger Waters because he didn't
Hmm.
know what was in Roger Waters' biography, and then they said, "Hey, actually, Roger Waters is not a sadistic murderous Zionist." Oh, okay, in that case, sorry, I should have said anything, right? I mean, he took it back for a scumbag reason, but at
You
least he
do
took
it
it
very
back.
good, RFK. It's like a spot on.
Please clap.